we've got to take big chances in order for the potential for a big positive outcome.
Hadouken! Hello, welcome back to A Boring Revolution, your number one news source for everything in regards to The Boring Company. Hope you all well. Got a great little episode for you. This is a lot more important than you would think it is. Now, I've kind of like talked down this project a little bit over the last month because I wasn't too sure about it, but I think it's an interesting project. I think it's in a good location. It's very close to Pflugerville, so where the actual Proofrock 2 and Proofrock 3 are being developed. And I think that there's going to be a lot of good testing on this particular project and kind of bleeding in the new team of engineers on this particular TBM. And I think this project is a lot more important than it might seem on the surface. It's not a very big tunnel. It's less than 500 feet long, but it is useful to the Boring Company as a learning exercise, and more importantly, it's a real world use case. And we have the kind of documentation that's kind of exploring what this project's going to do and the kind of process that they're going to utilize to bring it to fruition. And I thought, yeah, you know what? Let's have a quick look at this document and discuss it, and I can tell you why I'm excited and what useful nuggets of information are hidden within this document. And also, I'm going to ask for a little bit of help at the end. Hopefully, you guys can reach out to me and provide me with some information. But also, just before I start going through this, there is a video from the Kyle, Texas Town Hall, so Kyle Town Hall, a live video of them discussing this project. It's about 2 hours long. I have watched, I think, the first sort of 35-40 minutes of it. What I'm going to do is crop that video and post it on this channel eventually at some point in the next 4 or 5 days, and then you guys can see it. But I will provide a link to that video in the description below. So let's get into this because I've wasted enough time nattering. So Kyle, Texas Pedestrian Underpass proposal. Preliminary engineering, those are terms I do like to see. So it's a railroad pedestrian underpass. I've gone through this document, had a quick read of it, and I thought that I'd just kind of pull out little bits and pieces that I think are useful. So let's start off with kind of the introduction. We already know this, but I will kind of mention it for the benefit of new people here. But created by Elon Musk, founder of Tesla and SpaceX, the Boring Company creates safe, fast to dig and low cost transportation, utility, pedestrian and freight tunnels. The Boring Company, TBC, is a corporation founded in 2017 with its headquarters in Pflugerville, Texas. So remember, this is only up the road. This is less than sort of, what would we say, 80 miles away? I'm not entirely sure, but it's for US standards, that's fairly close. In the UK, 80 miles is a long distance, but in Texas standards, metrics, it's not a lot. TBC is a vertically integrated tunnel company. I love it when they say things like that. Why do I love that? Because there are a lot of cost savings, there are a lot of performance improvements that come about when you vertically integrate a company. Over the last 50 years, a lot of companies have been focused on doing exactly the opposite. They're basically just a management company and everything else is outsourced, and I don't like that. I've worked for companies that unfortunately have, you know, that approach. The more we can outsource, the better. If we can outsource it, we can cut costs. Well, let's do that. Let's do more outsourcing. Well, no, not necessarily. This is completely the opposite. The Boring Company wants to take everything in-house, so engineering, manufacturing and construction. Don't we love them to separate the two capabilities? For the railroad pedestrian underpass, the Boring Company will function as the single contractual point of contact and be responsible for the design, permitting and construction of the project. So they're basically in control of the entire process other than kind of approving the plans, and they'll do everything else. There will be some subcontractors involved in this project, but I think over time and some consultants as well, sadly. But not all consultants are, you know, leeches, but some are. So you've got to be careful. But you do need to use some consultants in very specialised areas. Will be engaged. So sub-consultants and subcontractors will be engaged by the Boring Company as needed to deliver the project and meet the expectations of City of Kyle. So enough of that fluff to begin with. What actually is this project? So the City of Kyle is interested in constructing a pedestrian. So first thing I've noticed is they call it a pedestrian underpass, and then they kind of use some other terms later on. So of the Union Pacific Railroad track south of Kyle Parkway, as shown conceptually in Figure 1, to provide connectivity between the Plum Creek subdivision and the vertical mixed-use project with destination dining to the east, so restaurants basically. The pedestrian underpass will accommodate multimodal transportation. So we've got constructing a pedestrian underpass, so specifically for pedestrians too, for both slow and fast moving, including electric vehicles. So are we talking about, you know, Ford F-150 type vehicles? Or are we talking about Arkimoto type vehicles, electric bicycles, e-bikes, which I really like the potential of e-bikes, and pedestrians? How is that all going to fit in a tunnel that is 12 foot wide? That is my big question. There are no construction drawings in this particular document. They do ask that some are produced later on, and hopefully we'll get to see how this is all going to work. But I'd be interested to see how that would function, because unless the electric vehicles they're specifying are a lot narrower than typical electric vehicles, so you know we're talking about things that are, you know, less than 4 foot wide. I don't really understand how this is going to function as a multimodal transport option, unless at some points of the day they close off that tunnel. I mean, that's a possibility. It might close it off to vehicle transport at certain points of the day to encourage people to walk through and cycle through that tunnel. But hey, it's not in that document. That is a pure assumption on my behalf. Let me just wet the palate, as it were. Blah blah. So the pedestrian underpass will connect people from the region to encourage multimodal movement to leisure and outdoor activities and integrate into the urban environment. The surrounding area will connect to a destination park, adjacent professional offices, dining and retail options. So like I always say on this channel, I support new infrastructure and I support new developments that create jobs and opportunities for people. So this obviously is opening up a parcel of land. I'm not sure which side it opens it up on, but it possibly this side looks a bit more empty. Just a single railway line, not a dual line like you would see here in the UK, which is interesting. You don't see many single lines in the UK. I don't know if that is a merit. It's just this railroad is very kind of underutilized and they only need one track. This retaining wall structure here is fascinating to me, because it looks kind of like a dry wall like you would see in the Lake District. So basically no mortar at all, it's just stones stacked together. But I'm guessing if you had a further look, it might be a bit more substantial than that. So as you can see, it's around 500 to 600 feet long, if I remember. I'm sure it'll mention it somewhere late in the document. But again, single tunnel, it's not a dual tunnel, it's a single tunnel. Porpoising, so as you can see, the top part of the tunnel, the structural lining is exposed at the surface. Looks like they enter the ground at around a 7 to 10 degree incline, and then they go underneath the railroad here. There are some retention ponds either side. Can you actually see that? Sorry guys. I hope you can see that clearly now. So there are retention ponds on both sides of the tracks. As you can see, we've got some electrical overhead lines here. There's some underground electrical infrastructure as well, I believe, on both sides. Let's actually read it rather than making assumptions. So what is the tunnel going to be constructed? Basically the same as always. It's good to see them mentioning it though. So it's got a 12-foot internal diameter. As I always say, I would like to see that a tiny bit bigger, but it will work. That's fine. You know, if they're going to standardize it, you know, they've got to stick with it now forever. So 12-foot internal diameter and a 13.5-foot external diameter. So the actual cutter head, when you're running calculations for the amount of spoil you're going to excavate, you're going to use that 13.5-foot external cutter head diameter with a 9-inch thick reinforced concrete segment. So that's getting down to the absolute minimum thickness that you can use for a concrete segment without seeing significant movements and fractures in those segments when you're moving the TBM forward. 9 inches is quite thin for modern standards, so it'd be interesting to see if they're doing things a little bit differently for those segments. Once mining of the tunnel is complete, a flat paved road surface is installed near the invert with a 10-foot width. So I'm surprised at that. The reason I'm surprised at that is if you have a look at this particular image here, that is around 7.5 to maybe it's slightly less than 7.5 foot, but that is 7.5 foot. So 10 foot would be up here. So if you imagine where these people's knees are, that would be where the road deck is going to be finishing. So that is great because you've got more room for vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists. But ultimately, all that real estate underneath the road deck is gone, and it potentially could add cost. However, you could have kind of a floating road deck, and it would cost almost the same and provide more room for vehicles and pedestrians. So I've been banging on for a long while about they should increase the width of the road deck and they should increase the depth of the road deck. You know, both are, you know, interlinked, and it's a good. For me, that is a really good thing to see that there. So fair play to the Boring Company. You know, great job on that one. They have kind of come to the right conclusion, as it were, which is good. So the underpass will pass beneath the Union Pacific Railroad tracks, transmission and distribution power lines operated by Pedernales Electrical Co-op. No idea who they are. Transmission lines are located on the east side of the railroad tracks and distribution lines are located on both sides. Interesting. So there's quite a few things to think about when they're doing this. If they pick the right location and they work with their partners at, you know, this place and so on and so forth, then they'll be able to avoid any issues. Because trust me, the last thing you want to do is strike an electrical cable, and it has happened to me in the past, and the consequences were not good. Fortunately, no one was injured, but it was a hairy situation. That should never ever happen. And it was, yeah, basically no one's fault really, other than people in the past making very poor decisions and not documenting things. But hey, you need to assume that things have not been documented. That's what a good engineer, site manager, you know, site agent will do. So they need to do the work prior to starting this tunneling to make sure that they don't have any issues. The TBC's design will include provisions to prevent impacts to existing structures and monitor them closely. So basically, they'll survey the site at all times, make sure, you know, that there's no subsidence, that structures are not moving, tilting, foundations are not being undermined. You know, you're not drilling into services and things like that, or putting undue pressure on top of services that's going to cause like buckling and things like that. So there's a few things to think about, but it is doable. I've seen it a lot harder than that, to be fair, in terms of how a site's laid out. So it is reasonably good. What else have we got? So these are kind of things that the Boring Company are going to need to do. So they'll do a site visit, walk the alignment, review the potential launch and retrieval locations, and meet with city staff just to kind of alleviate any concerns that they have. Utility and existing structure coordination. TBC, with the support from the city, will collect GIS data for existing utilities in CAD. I've just mentioned it before, but please do never ever assume that the plans are 100% correct. I have made that mistake and come to regret it, because not everything is on the plans, especially if you're working in an area where, you know, there's a building that's 100 years old or even less than that. Sometimes there's buildings that are 50 years old and things are not documented. So you've got to go around and you've got to survey it properly and make sure you identify where everything is. And if you need to dig like trial pits and things like that, you know, as such, you need to do that and find where things are. Geo Technical Investigation, so identifying kind of what the geology is, what the strata below the railway line is currently, and also like, you know, how have they built that railway line? What is like the kind of layers of ground below that? What do they look like? What foundations or footings have they put below the railway lines? And you need to have a good look at that. There should be drawings on that. Again, whether those drawings are accurate for the entire length of the line, that remains to be seen. But you can look through trial pits and various other boreholes and things like that, and identify whether what they say is correct. And usually it is, but you never assume it is. Phase 1 environmental site assessment. So the environmental site assessment, horizontal and vertical alignment development to identify and recommend a conceptual horizontal and vertical alignment, provides connectivity. So this is kind of like they gathered all the data, they understand where all the services are, what the ground conditions are like, you know, what land they're going to use, you know, where they're going to put the kind of site offices and the thing, where they're going to launch the TBM, and then they say, right, this is how it's going to look, you know, this is the final kind of alignment. Union Pacific Railroad, so because it's a Union Pacific Railroad, they're also going to make you gain a permit to go underneath their land, which could take a little bit of time. So again, that needs to go in as soon as possible. Preliminary engineering drawings. So the working will exhibit 11-inch by 17-inch exhibits of the proposed horizontal and vertical alignments, as well as plan views of the work areas and any construction easements required. So an easement is like an access to a parcel of land that you need to use to build whatever you're building. So in this case, you'll have an easement on both sides of the track. In one particular easement, so you're accessing land that you don't necessarily own. You'll have somewhere where you store your concrete segments, where you have, you know, areas to kind of fabricate parts of your TBM, and an area where you have your crane, you know, to bring pieces on top of where the TBM is being assembled. And then you'll have obviously like a spoil heap. So you probably have quite a big spoil heap, and then at some point you'll empty away that spoil heap. So there's that obviously needs considering, and you need to consult with all stakeholders who are in the area. Potentially, if that's I don't know if that's a farm or just some empty land, I'm not sure. But if it's a farm, you need to consult with that farmer to make sure he's happy with what you're doing and that you're going to clean up the land after you've left, which honestly you need to make sure that happens. That can be a real pain in the arse if you don't do things properly. Even if you do 99% of what you promised, you're going to have people chasing you around, and you don't want that. So preliminary project details, blah blah blah, preliminary engineering drawings. So I'd love to get copies of preliminary engineering drawings. I presume they will start to appear in the next month or so. The board high level preliminary project delivery schedule. It's kind of like your program, so you know in what order you're going to do things. At what point are you going to start polishing the machine? What point are you going to start assembling and fabricating your cradle? When you're going to, like, you know, clear the site or the easement ready for you to start work, that kind of thing. Are you going to assemble your hoarding, you know, that kind of thing? Where you're going to get power from? How are you going to make connections to existing services? All that will be in your program in terms of how you go through that in a particular order, and what is your critical path is obviously a core kind of consideration that you need to make sure it is considered at all times. So deliverables. So again, I would like to get access to some of these documents. So most importantly, the preliminary engineering drawings. I love looking at drawings. It's really kind of opens your mind as to what they're thinking when they're designing this. The plan and profile of selected horizontal and vertical alignments. It indicates that they might be separate documents then, but yeah, that's what it should be actually, separate. So you kind of have your top-down view, and then you'd have your kind of like you're looking almost through the ground at where it's going underneath the railroad. So those, again, these documents, geotechnical data report. It'd be interesting to see what the geology is like, what kind of material they've used to build that embankment for the railway line. Environmental site assessment, I'm not too interested in, but you know, I probably will still read it. Not interested in the permit for the Union Pacific. Design and build construction proposal, would love to see that. Preliminary engineering report format as power slide deck. Timeframes and pricing. All this is, you know, for them to do some work, they're going to incur some costs, so they're just passing on those costs to Kyle City Council. Not heard of this guy before, Brian Gettinger. He might be a new person working for the Boring Company. He might have been there for a couple of years, I don't know, but it's the first I've heard of his name. So it'd be interesting to see what he's doing with this job. Maybe he's the kind of lead guy in Texas. In terms of my assumptions for this job, how much is this job going to end up costing Kyle City Council? Somewhere in the region of $1.5 million to around $2.4 million, in that kind of ballpark, I would imagine. Now, if you're working that out per mile, that's very expensive, but at the end of the day, for small tunnels like this, where you know your porpoising is fairly like not very far apart. Essentially, it's like 500, 600 feet. You know, it's going to cut. Those are the most expensive elements. Is driving your TBM into the ground and then retrieving your TBM on the other side. So this is not a straight tunnel. It is a curved tunnel. So the costs are going to be more than what we've seen in the past. But that's fine, because in the grand scheme of things, you know, $2 million is not very much for a city like Kyle that can borrow money for not very much like interest. How long do I think this project could potentially take? Just off the top of my head, I think the tunnelling part will take less than a month, probably way less than a month, but actually like preparing the site and getting ready to go, again, that might be another month to 6 weeks, maybe a bit longer, 7 weeks. So you're looking 2.5 months from start to finish for this, I think, worst case scenario. But there's still a lot of work to do prior to them actually starting construction, and it still could potentially not go through. So, you know, it's difficult to say. But just coming back to these documents here, that's the end of the report. I'd love to get copies of these. Maybe you work at the local council, or maybe you have connections with this area, or maybe you're just a viewer who enjoys watching, you know, the channel. But if you do have access to any of these documents, particularly the preliminary engineering drawings and the horizontal and vertical alignments, please do drop me an email, either with a link or even just send me the PDF document, and you'll definitely get a mention in the video, and you'll get a personal thank you from me via email, because I'd be very, very impressed with your help. Anything that you can offer me in terms of pictures as well, and I have people, awesome people that go around in Las Vegas and take pictures for me. There's quite a few people now that do that. Some people just do it once, you know. I've got various others, helpers, amazing people who take pictures for me all the time, and that's awesome. Also, I just want to thank all my Patreons as well for supporting the channel. And yeah, I think we'll just terminate that video here. So I hope you enjoyed that and you learned a bit about this project. I'll add this to the quarterly report, which is overdue, and I'll probably do that at some point in the next couple of weeks. Also, the link to the Kyle Town Hall meeting, which covers this project extensively, I will put the link in the description below. Hope you're all having an awesome day, and I will see you on the next video. Don't be boring. Take care now. Thank you, and goodbye.
Perfect. 昇竜烈波